Imagine this. You're sitting in a VIP seat, ready to settle in for a long flight, when suddenly you're told to get up. No explanation, no apology. And the reason? The person behind you is white. Sounds unbelievable, right? But this is exactly what happened to Marcus Griffin, a black CEO, on a routine flight. What followed shocked the world and sparked a conversation that we can't ignore. Stay tuned to find out how this seemingly small act of injustice led to a corporate firestorm. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a like. It really motivates us to keep bringing you more exciting content. Now, let's get into it. Excuse me, sir. You're in the wrong seat. Those 7 words flipped a routine flight into a full-blown corporate nightmare. It was a sunny Tuesday afternoon, and passengers were boarding a popular U.S. airline headed for New York. The first-class cabin, with its leather recliners and champagne service, was nearly full. One man, calm, sharply dressed and quietly confident, settled in his seat a window-side VIP pod. He pulled out his tablet, placed his carry-on overhead, and began preparing for the 4-hour flight ahead. Then came the tap on his shoulder. A flight attendant with a rehearsed smile and a clipboard stood beside him. "Excuse me, sir. You're in the wrong seat," she said, voice polite but firm. He looked up, slightly puzzled. "I don't believe so," he replied, showing his boarding pass with a clean 1A printed clearly on it. But she didn't look at the pass. "There must be a mistake," she continued, glancing back toward the boarding gate. "This seat is reserved for another guest." And just like that, without further explanation, a white man in a tailored suit was ushered forward. The crew member welcomed him with a warm smile, gesturing toward the seat just vacated. The black man stood up slowly, clearly embarrassed, and quietly stepped aside. No apology, no double-checking the manifest, just the cold, mechanical assumption that he didn't belong there. The entire cabin fell silent. Eyes shifted uncomfortably. Some passengers looked away, pretending not to notice. Others whispered to each other, their expressions tight with discomfort. But what no one realized at that moment was this. The man they had just displaced, publicly, needlessly, wasn't just another traveler. He wasn't someone trying to sneak into a first-class seat. He was Marcus Griffin, the founder and CEO of one of the most powerful tech firms in America. He had built billion-dollar systems. He had dined with presidents. And now, he had just been dismissed like an imposter. The flight crew had made a split-second judgment, and it would soon become the worst mistake of their careers. Let's take a moment to understand who Marcus Griffin truly was. Marcus wasn't your average businessman. He was a black self-made billionaire, a man who had defied unimaginable odds to build an empire from the ground up. Born into a modest family in a small town, Marcus faced challenges that most could never fathom. But it wasn't the obstacles that defined him. It was his determination to overcome them. He wasn't just fighting for success. He was fighting for a seat at the table in an industry that had long been dominated by corporate giants, often overlooking talent like his. From a young age, Marcus was immersed in the world of technology. With little more than a computer and a burning desire to change his circumstances, he began coding in the basement of his parents' home. His early years were filled with long nights, self-taught lessons, and countless failed attempts. But Marcus didn't give up. He honed his skills, learned from his failures, and, through sheer will, built software solutions that would later turn into the backbone of the tech industry. In his journey to the top, Marcus was no stranger to high-profile meetings. He worked with major global corporations, advising governments and multinational firms on cutting-edge technology solutions. He had attended world forums, mingling with heads of state and industry leaders, discussing the future of tech and global economics. His reputation had grown not just for his intellect, but for his unwavering commitment to breaking down barriers and creating opportunities for others from underrepresented backgrounds. By the time he stepped onto that plane, Marcus Griffin wasn't just another passenger. He was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech company, a man who had fought tooth and nail to reach the top. But despite all his accomplishments, he was still being judged by the color of his skin. A man who had built an empire was now treated as an unwanted guest in his own seat, his success suddenly overshadowed by a single, unjust moment of racial prejudice. The moment Marcus was forced to leave his seat, it quickly escalated from what could have been a simple misunderstanding to something much more profound, a spark that ignited a firestorm of outrage. What initially seemed like an awkward encounter soon became a flashpoint for discussions about race, privilege, and systemic inequality. The incident didn't stay confined to the cabin. It spilled out into the wider world, gaining traction across social media in a matter of hours. The story was shared on every platform, with people from all walks of life voicing their disbelief and anger at the blatant injustice Marcus had experienced. Within minutes, the hashtag Justice for Marcus began trending worldwide. Social media users, from everyday citizens to high-profile celebrities and influencers, expressed their outrage. Many were particularly appalled by the sheer disregard for Marcus's dignity, especially considering his accomplishments. Ordinary people shared their own stories of discrimination and bias, drawing parallels to Marcus's experience. The incident sparked a wider conversation about how even those who have made it can still fall victim to racial prejudice in the most unexpected places. As the backlash mounted, the airline's social media pages were flooded with comments. People demanded accountability, urging the company to take immediate action and issue a public apology. There was a growing sense of solidarity among the supporters, and the calls for justice were loud and unified. For many, this wasn't just about one man being wronged. It was about the larger systemic issues that still plague society, from corporate boardrooms to everyday encounters. Despite the growing public scrutiny, Marcus remained remarkably composed. He chose not to lash out at the airline, its staff, or the passengers who had witnessed the injustice. Instead, he used the platform to address the broader issue at hand. He spoke about the systemic racism that continues to affect Black people, even those who have reached the pinnacles of success. Marcus made it clear that this incident was not just about him. It was about a much larger issue, one that touched every area of society. He highlighted that racial bias doesn't just occur in the streets. It's deeply ingrained in every system, even in spaces where Black people are supposedly successful. His message resonated deeply, as he urged others to recognize that this moment was a reflection of the prejudice many people face every day, regardless of their wealth, power, or status. Within hours of the incident, the airline's top executives were scrambling to address the fallout. What began as a seemingly routine flight had now turned into a full-blown crisis. With the story rapidly gaining traction on social media, the airline was facing unprecedented scrutiny. It became clear that this was not just another customer complaint. It was a defining moment that could potentially damage the airline's brand reputation for years to come. In response, an emergency meeting was called, bringing together the company's leadership, legal team, and public relations experts. The atmosphere in the boardroom was tense. There was a sense of urgency as the executives knew they needed to act swiftly to restore the public's trust and minimize the damage. PR teams were placed on high alert, drafting statements and preparing for media inquiries. In the midst of the chaos, the airline issued a public statement. "We deeply regret the incident that occurred today and apologize for the misjudgment of our staff. We are taking immediate action to rectify the situation," the statement read. On the surface, it seemed like a standard corporate apology. But what happened next was anything but ordinary. Here's where the twist came. The airline didn't just offer a vague apology and move on. They took immediate and decisive action. The employees involved, the flight attendants who had asked Marcus to vacate his seat without verifying the boarding pass or confirming the reservation, were fired. The decision was swift, and it sent shockwaves through the industry. In an era where many companies are reluctant to take responsibility, the airline's quick response made it clear that they were not tolerating this kind of behavior. The firing of the staff, though controversial to some, was seen by many as a bold statement. It was the airline's way of making it clear that discrimination, in any form, would not be tolerated within their organization. The CEO, in a public address, emphasized that this wasn't just about a single passenger's experience. It was a reflection of the airline's commitment to core values such as respect, equality, and fairness. The CEO vowed to implement additional training programs to ensure that all employees would be better equipped to handle such situations in the future. The news didn't end with the firing of the staff. In fact, Marcus's story only gained momentum, sparking even broader conversations about racism, privilege, and the deeply ingrained assumptions people make based on appearance. What initially seemed like an isolated incident quickly transformed into a national conversation. For Marcus, this wasn't simply about regaining his dignity or seeking an apology from the airline. It was about turning a painful moment into an opportunity to address the systemic issues that continue to plague society. Rather than allowing the incident to fade into the background or become just another social media trend, Marcus used it as a platform for discussion. He didn't focus solely on his own experience. Instead, he used his voice to shed light on the larger issues of unconscious bias, racial profiling, and the way society often underestimates or marginalizes people based on their race. In his public statements, Marcus emphasized that even the most successful individuals, people who have worked tirelessly to achieve their goals, are not immune to discrimination. He encouraged both individuals and businesses to reflect on their own biases and reassess the way they treat others. He urged leaders in all industries to take responsibility for the systems they support, especially those that may inadvertently reinforce prejudice. Marcus highlighted the importance of not just recognizing racism in overt acts, but also in the small, everyday actions and assumptions that often go unnoticed but have lasting impacts. What started as a humiliating and personal moment for Marcus transformed into a wake-up call for an entire industry. It made people rethink how they interact with others, particularly those who may be different from them. The incident forced individuals to ask themselves, how often do we judge someone based on their appearance, their name, or the color of their skin, without even realizing it? And perhaps more importantly, how can we prevent incidents like this from happening in the future? Marcus's story became a powerful reminder that even the smallest acts of injustice can have far-reaching consequences. It serves as a call to action for all of us, to think twice before making assumptions, to challenge our own biases, and to stand up against discrimination, no matter where or when it happens. If you were shocked by this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification for more thought-provoking content. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments. How can we create a more equal world for everyone? See you in the next video.